Hello, Karen is back with another moment for grade 10 theory and specifically structural analysis. So I'm just going to ask you to stop the video to print off a copy of Für Elise by Beethoven. It might be titled A Bagatelle or Für Elise, and Sonata in C major, K545. And I'm actually going to say we're going to look at all three movements here. So if you could just stop the video and come back around 35 seconds, we'll be ready to go. And here we are with rondo form. Now, rondo form started in its very basic idea as alternation of two ideas. We saw this in ternary when it was ABA. Now, if you did a bit of repeats and you went ABABA, that is the most basic kind of rondo form where the A keeps coming back. Now, often it is ABACA or ABACABA, but truthfully, as long as the A material is presented 3 times in the home key, it can be many, many pages long. At the advanced level, Schumann's Fachschwankos Wien is an example of a rondo form that has more than A, B, and C in going on, and it's a wonderful, wonderful piece. So let's start with Für Elise. Now, the reason that I use this is everybody is so familiar with it. And we all know that the opening is our A section. Still A. And we just ended with an authentic cadence in A minor. And then we have 3 chords that are a mini link. And it does what all links do, is it joins up 2 things that are different in style and often joins up 2 things that are different in key. And in this case, we ended in A minor, and we're going to go straight forward in F major. So our B section starts on the downbeat of measure 23 with a singing melody, and it's supposed to have a completely different sound and coloration than the A section. And suddenly we're at the A minor over E, and now we're at a cadential 6/4 in C major. So our B section continues, but it continues in C major. And we are right into a link. It's a longer link this time than just 3 chords to get back to the A section. So this would be A2. And in this case, A2 and A1 notation, it matches really well. In many cases, the repeat sign that was in the original A section is not present in A2 or A3, but that doesn't change the fact that it's A material. Now, when we get to the end of A2, we have our familiar and no link, not even 3 chords. It's directly into so in there, what we have is the left hand repeating A over and over again, which is the tonic of A minor. So that means that it can be a pedal point and other things can be happening over top of it. That's the C sharp diminished 7. Going to D minor the way it's supposed to. G sharp diminished 7. Going to A minor, and now suddenly we go from D minor to the D sharp diminished 7, which is actually 7 diminished 7 of 5 within A minor, because it goes to the cadential 6/4. So all of this area is your C section. It gets a glorious B flat major chord that is a surprise to most people. And in the ARCT level, we actually call that the Neapolitan or the flat 2 key. but he's only there briefly. It's actually more of just a chord that leads to a dominant function. So in 74, we have the 7 diminished 6/5 of A minor, going to 1 in first inversion, to 5/7, and there's your 1 that is your cadence, except that it isn't just a cadence. It is one of the best known links because it is actually putting your A minor arpeggio practice to good use. And we keep on going, and that's all a link until we get to A3. And in this case, there's no codetta or coda added to the end of this. We just have our final A, and we are blessed to be able to say, if I have a ternary form where the A is all identical in notation and in rhythm, then it's the performer's job, it's their duty to make things sound different. So one of them would be more gentle than the others, and some of them would be more emotional. But your A sections in this case are all identical. We have a clear B section, we have a clear C section. Often the B and the C section are individually in different keys, but you could see that the B section here starts in F major and goes to C major. Well, C major is the dominant key of F major, but it was also a great one to end the B section in because it was the relative of A minor, and thus we could easily get into that link to get us back to the key of A minor. So rondo in its simplest form is everybody's favorite piece, für Elise. So now if I grab my favorite Henley Verlag book, so I like to have these books in hard copy because I'm opening them so often. And I will say for the grade 10 students, there are a few things that if you're planning to go on to ARCT, it's worth the investment. Yes, you could have looked on the IMSLP site or public domain sites to get a copy of this, but often they are copies that have inferior editings going on. It is worth it to say that the great literature of the classical period is worth an investment, and owning all of the Beethoven, all of the Mozart, all of the Haydn sonatas, and then of course the Well-Tempered Clavier of Bach, both books, is the best way to have the available pieces for us to explore that give us the basis of music, and then in the next grade we can go on into romantic music where we take these rules and we expand them. So now, if we go into the Sonata Simplice, some people know this as the Tweety Bird theme, because those of us that are my age remember what it was like to have a cat chasing a little bird. And then the cat would come and the bird would stop swinging. Check out Tweety Bird on YouTube. He's well worth a listen. But I found it interesting. Now, most people really wouldn't have thought too much about this, but I liked the fact that A, it was actually played in the right key. And that whole bit of, oh no, something's going to go wrong, they left you with the dominant seventh unresolved. So they interrupted the cadence factor at the end of this particular melody. So even in cartoons, the whole idea of the functionality of music and how things resolve is taken into effect by the musicians that set the background. So we are first movement, so we are in sonata form. And we're in C major, everybody's favorite key. So we seem to have a theme right there. It's a very gentle cadence, but it is a 5-6-5 to 1. As mentioned before in other videos, every area of any piece of music needs to end with a cadence. It's the punctuation. So theme 1 is your delightful little 4 bars there. And then we end up with runs here that are a bridge. suddenly we get accidentals. So we had an F sharp at the end of measure 10, but we had an F natural earlier in the bar. So really, that sounds like it's a 5-6-5-5 going to a cadential 6-4, 5-6-4-5, and that is just a really glorious half cadence. Or is it possibly an authentic cadence in G major? So I interpret it as a half cadence in C major that also pivots and acts as an authentic cadence in G major, so that we can do theme 2 on the downbeat of measure, I need to make these larger, 11, 12, 13. Now here we go. Many, many times our great composers had more melodies in their mind than you and I could ever have in weeks, months, or years. And so they would put more than 1 or 2 themes in sonata form. So this turns out to be theme 2A. The 2 means that it's the second key, which is G major. Here we went to the dominant as expected. And it's A because it's the first theme in the second key. So we have the have a theme 2B that is completely different. And it's a glorious descending fifth sequence. So right there, when you have a trill that is a full bar long, and the left hand is merrily playing some sort of dominant seventh. Often it's in a broken form, but whether it's solid, broken, or whatnot, the long trill over dominant seventh is like having a stoplight with a flashing light on it. It's saying we're getting to the end of something. So this is the end of our second theme area, because it actually does. It's all dominant seventh, and then we have a codetta in G major, which really is just 5-1-5-1. 5-7 to 1. 5-7-1-1-1. And all of that is our exposition. That would be the first word we would put above our time signature back at the beginning. So just to recap, theme 1 is in bar 1. Our bridge is in bar 5. Theme 2A is in bar 13. Theme 2B is in bar 18. And our codetta is in bar 26. Now, that means that after the repeat sign, we have a development section. And right away, we hear the key of G minor, which is an easy key to get to from G major because the tonic and the dominant are the same. But by making it into the minor, the parallel or tonic minor, it adds color and tension to the moment, which is what it's supposed to do. Now, composers can either use theme 1, bridge material, theme 2A, 2B, or the codetta. And here, Mozart turned around and used the codetta material. And then he goes into a few of the scales, which is really hinting at the bridge. And right there, he did a glorious use of the augmented second in the harmonic minor scale to give it even more angst. Normally we would be using melodic minor, but to increase tension, the harmonic minor is used. And we have the same idea, but going in D minor. And then we go into more runs again. So you can see that he's using the codetta and elements of the bridge in his development. And at the end of the development, we have a big surprise. So first of all, one of the surprises is most people can't even play this at the right speed because you've just gotten so used to doing 16th notes that it's just like coming off of 401 and having to go 60 kilometers in the city, and you feel like, oh, I've got to be wrong. This is the wrong speed. This feels way too slow. Well, I would suggest getting out the metronome. But the other surprise is that Mozart put this in F major. Our recapitulation is supposed to start in the tonic key, but that's not the way it happens here. Tweety's in F major. And then we get our bridge. And the bridge is very similar in style to our first bridge, but Mozart was absolutely glorious and said, oh, we don't want to just do runs in the right hand. We've got to make sure that the left hand is equally good. And he ran through and he extended the bridge so that the left hand would get some extra runs, and runs that need special fingering because we always come up one short if we don't think about the fingering. But we end with the it's that same cadence that we had at the end of the bridge before that you say, is that a half cadence in the key of F major? It doesn't sound like it at all. And in this case, it really doesn't. It sounds like we have a half cadence in the key of C major. Okay. Well, we started in F major, and we are supposed to be in C major overall. So it makes sense in a way that because Mozart for theme 1 in C major went up a perfect fifth to get to theme 2 in G major. When he did his recapitulation, he started in F major for theme 1 so he could go up a perfect fifth to get to C major for his theme 2. Most of the time, theme 2 will be in the home key, but Mozart was a brilliant person and knew how to do it differently and still have it sound right. So we have theme 2A coming at 58, and it truly is in C major. And then we have theme 2B, and it looks like it's at 63. We notice that very soon and close to the end, we have that trill on the dominant seventh of C major to announce that it's the end of theme 2B, and we have a codetta, which is 1, 5, 7 to 1, and then 1, 1, of course. I think my meter was just a hair off there, but I think you got the whole idea. So this is an example of sonata form where there's a straight theme. Theme 2 is a theme group, not just a theme. And we have the unexpected that the recapitulation starts in the subdominant key. So now let's look at the second movement. It is an andante. So andantes we know to be walking speed, but in comparison to our movement 1, allegro, we definitely are thinking that we have slowed down the whole tempo and that we are going to be more graceful and songful. Now, it's very possible to actually use your pedal here. And some people finger pedal. Go with whatever your teacher is suggesting for you. Now, we can see immediately on our first 2 pages here that we don't just have one repeat sign at the 1/3 point and then at the very end. So that means we can't possibly be in any sort of sonata form or a bridge sonata form. Sometimes our second movements really can have a lot of options available. Most of the time it's not sonata form, but I can tell you there's examples where movement 2 is. Sometimes it's abbreviated sonata form where we get only the exposition and the recapitulation, but there's no development. I've heard it be theme and variations. I've heard it be rondo. You know, there's one where it was ternary form, so a compound ternary as well. So there are many options for the second movement. Frequently, the second movement is also in a different key than the overall piece, and usually it goes to the subdominant key. Well, Mozart had already gone to the subdominant key to start his recapitulation, so I think he wanted a new color and he went to G major. Now this is going to be our rondo form. So this is not quite as straightforward as for Elise, but it is fitting into our pattern. So bar 1, G major, is our main theme, A. And you can hear in there, we've got some cool chords that in the next grade, we're going to call them common tone diminished sevenths because they're glorious to discover. Now, our A section actually goes right up until that first repeat sign at bar 16. Now, I just want to bring to your attention something that happens often in slow movements. Let's look at our cadence. So I'm doing the last two bars of the A section, which would be 15 and 16. So on the downbeat of bar 15, we have a D sharp appoggiatura that gives this moment more color and emphasis. Cadential 6/4. And I love that sound because it sounds like a dominant 13th. And then what a lot of people do is they see here F sharp A C. I'm not sure what to call that. We call it a one chord with a triple appoggiatura, and if we've been pedaling, it actually sounds like a suspension because we just heard all of those held together by the pedal. So you can either classify those top three notes, C, F sharp, and A, as suspensions or appoggiaturas. But the tonic chord, the capital one, must be under the downbeat. After the repeat sign at bar 17, we have our B section in D major. So you can really hear that it can be much more expressive. And when we get to the end of this, he's going to be pretty predictable. It's going to be 8 bars. So that we have, again, another cadence point at and look at this. It's another appoggiatura or triple suspension idea before a tiny link and A2, which looks like it is in bar 25. The A2 is slightly different than A1. But if we stopped and asked you to put down all of your chord numbers, you would discover that it's exactly the same progression. He's just given a gentle variant of it. We don't worry about that variation. It is still A2. And we come to our big cadence with our triple appoggiatura and suspension. And after the repeat sign, we start our C section. So we now are at bar 33, and we can see that we're in the key of G minor. And it's a variation of our B in a new key. And when we get into here, we end up coming into the key of B flat major, and I'm starting to truncate things to just move a little bit more quickly. So we end up in B flat major, and we end up back in G minor. We have all sorts of options here because our C section actually is acting like a development. It often has multiple keys in it and uses themes from previously. And here, when we get to our ending here, we are at bar 48. We have our triple suspension again. And a teeny tiny link before A3. So our A sections do not all have to be exactly the same length. Sometimes composers will do a longer version and a shorter version and then an extended version. Check out the second movement of the Pathetique Sonata by Beethoven for a really good version of rondo form where each A section ends up to be a little bit more instrumented. There's more notes put on, giving the illusion that he was thinking of the orchestra when he was composing. Now this C section goes all the way to, let's see, measure 63, 64. It is extended. We end up with this again. And we come to that same cadence that I discussed before. There's your 5-7 to 1, but he's not finished. So he's gone to C major. He's doing that little reference to the subdominant key again, trying to add color. So we are in a coda situation. Now, it depends on your particular institution, whether they might call this a codetta, a coda. Some might call it a cadential extension, but I'm going to reserve that. I personally think that this is quite developmental. I'm going to call it a coda. And then I'm going to say that when we get to our last 3 bars, this is where our cadential extension is. 5-7, 1. 5-7 to 1, 1. So that little ending there, I have seen some institutions say that the codetta was back where I called it the coda, and that the coda was the last 3 measures. I think by the nature of the word coda is supposed to be a bigger element than a codetta. And yet traditionally we don't put codas before codettas. So thus, let's just call this one a coda and our last 3 bars a cadential extension. Now we're going to turn the page and we're going to go to our final movement 3. I was just checking to see whether we had this written out as 3 or 4 pages, and my page is 2 pages long, my movement. And probably you can see right at the top, it's another rondo. We are back in the key of C major, and we have a per key spirited rondo. Interesting that he really doesn't give us a tempo, but it's just has more life and is not as gentle as the last movement. So there we have our A section, 8 bars, 2/4 time. It doesn't take long to do. And then we have B section. Immediately he went to G major without a link of any sort. Composers can do that. You can have 1 chord, 3 chords as we saw with your Elise, nothing at all, or something super long as we also saw with your Elise. So there are some things that we have to just be on the lookout for. So B section is in G major. Sorry. And then it seems to allude to the first movement, doesn't it? First section. And there is our beautiful cadence in G major. And now we get a link. So our link started halfway through 16, and halfway through 20 we get A2. Well, that sounded exactly the same. It was 8 bars long, and that means we're now into C section. Now, a lot of people get really confused about what key we are in at this point. Well, that D sharp that is in the downbeat of the C section is actually just an incomplete neighbor tone. He doesn't have anything to do with the key. We are in A minor. So you can actually hear the G sharps having more strength than the D sharps. That's right. And now we're definitely, you can hear the A minor. All those E's, it almost sounds like it could be a little guitar thing. But we've got 5, 1, 6, 4, 5, 1, 6, 4, and then an open octave. And then we're back to this. And again, Mozart went Got to make sure we can do it upside down. So it is really cool how he gets going with this. And then at the end of all these glorious little two-note slurs, everybody has to work on their two-note slurs. Cadential 6/4 to 1. And then we have a link that's starting in A minor and somehow has got to get to C major. 5/7, 1, 5/7, 1, 5/7, 1, 5/7 of C major. Grand pause. Well, our ear's expecting 1 of C major because we just heard an unresolved dominant 7th. So we have A3 right after that fermata. And to me, that's the end of your A section. That's the 8 bars we were expecting. And now we get a codetta. You know what? I would almost say this is a coda as well. Based on what we said about our previous movement, I think this one is a little bit more important than a codetta, but if on your list it says find a codetta, you will put codetta on it because we would actually have to mark it wrong if you said coda if we tell you to write codetta on. So sorry about that. It's the way exams go. Follow the exam protocol. No matter what, follow the list. And at the end of the coda/codetta, there's your cadence. Cadential 6/4, 5/7, and then we have a cadential extension. All it does is 1, 5, 1, 5, 1. There's your 1. Cadential 6/4, 5/7, 1. Cadential 6/4, 5/7 to 1, 1, 6, 1, 6, 4, 1, 6, 1. So at the end, you can call that one of the prettiest arpeggio 6/4s, or you can just say, we hear that just as 1. And there you have 3 movements of the Mozart Sonata Semplice and how it has sonata form, followed by rondo form, followed by rondo form. All things for the grade 10 student to understand. Thank you very much.